Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for OnSI every single day since August 2019, and we are here to keep you informed through yet another offseason together. As always, you can always find our 100% free, 24/7 boots on the ground content of the Jacksonville Jaguars when you follow us on social media such as Facebook and Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. Today, we are talking about day 15 of training camp for the Jaguars. It was a full-on offensive versus defense scrimmage for the vast majority of practice from period 5 onward. The first 4 shorter periods were all individual drills, quarterbacks with receivers, that kind of stuff on air, and then they went to full team scrimmage afterward. And folks, it was a day. It was certainly a practice for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I wouldn't put it in any terms to say it was one of the worst offensive practices I've seen the Jaguars have. I've seen them have worse. But it was definitely, I'd say, the worst I've seen them look in a scrimmage. Probably their worst offensive practice of training camp, etc. And there were a lot of different layers that went into it. So obviously, first and foremost, everything starts with the quarterback. I know you've seen things out there saying he actually had a good practice, here was his incompletion of completions, etc. My perception of how Trevor Lawrence practiced was probably average, a little below average. I don't think it was a good day for Trevor. He had a really good first drive where his only incompletion was a drop by Brian Thomas Jr. on the first play. And then he had a touchdown to Brian Thomas Jr. That was one of his best plays of training camp. He rolled right. You could tell he was instantly looking for Tank Bigsby. Defense had him covered up. He continues to roll right with his eyes up, scanning the field, and he just fires an absolute laser to Brian Thomas Jr. in traffic. Thomas Jr. gets the ball right to his chest, falls down the end zone, touchdown. It was the best play of the day by the offense, the best simple play that anybody made, offense or defense, and one of Trevor Lawrence's best throws of training camp. Other than that, there really weren't, in my opinion, many throws where it looked like, an S-tier level throw that could just kind of elevate an otherwise up and down day. He had some decent throws in there, but he had a good amount of underthrows. A couple deep ones. There was one where he missed Brian Thomas Jr., one where he missed Britton Strange, and then even some of the passes the receivers didn't come down with that, maybe they had a chance at. The ball placement could have been better. So I thought it was one of Trevor's weaker practices of training camp. The one interception, his worst play of the day. I think his worst play of training camp. He steps up in the pocket, tries to find Parker Washington over the middle, and just completely sails the pass. A leaping Washington, couldn't get a hand on it, and it goes into Andrew Winger's hands. And he was 10, 15 yards away. He wasn't even covering Washington, really. And he gets the interception. It was the lone interception, turnover, whatever you want to call it, of the day for the defense. So it wasn't like the offense was going out there and Trevor was just throwing pick after pick. But I thought, in terms of the accuracy we have seen from him in other days in training camp, definitely a down day. I mean, Trevor Lawrence himself said after practice that, he thought that there were a lot of things that they needed to do better. And it goes beyond, obviously, like I said, Trevor Lawrence. He's obviously a big part of it. Everything starts with him. But they had other issues. There were a lot of penalties. There were, I counted 8. I've seen some different numbers out there, but I counted 8. Not all in the first team, but several. I'd say too many. There was one sequence where flags were thrown on back-to-back-to-back plays. And it just, whether it's false starts, holding, whatever you want to call it, it's just something that the Jaguars can't let happen anymore. And I thought Trevor Lawrence was really good on this after practice. He said it's kind of been the theme of their training camp. And he's right, because Liam Cohen talked after the scrimmage about the penalties. Liam Cohen talked after the first preseason game about the penalties. And, Liam Cohen didn't speak today, but I'm certain that he didn't watch today's practice and come away thinking the penalty problem was fixed. It has been a problem for a couple of weeks now, and it's gotten to the point where, penalties pop up in week 1 against the Carolina Panthers. Can anybody really be that surprised? In my opinion, no. In my opinion, if you see the Jaguars struggle with penalties in week one, then that's something that simply put, we've seen throughout the course of training camp. And, it's, I think, past a concern. It's becoming a little bit of a, sticking point in characterization of them right now. Maybe things look different in the regular season, but practice is, when it's a more controlled scenario, you're running your plays, you're running against your defense. It's not, a game it's game situations, but it's not, the high stakes aren't there. You can take some of the mental aspect out of it. So penalties continue to be an issue for the Jaguars. They were an issue throughout the entire day. It really didn't get better in the second, third team units, etc. I'd say that was definitely one of the frustrating parts of it, and kind of kept the offense. The offense just looked kind of disjointed. I didn't feel like everything was flowing. I didn't feel like there was much of a rhythm. It felt like that on the first drive, which was capped off by a very impressive Tank Bigsby run. I thought Tank had a couple of nice runs. The running backs, I think if you're going to talk about a bright spot for the offense, I think you have to talk about the running backs. Travis Etienne looked good as a receiver. Tank Bigsby had some impressive runs. Bayshot Tootin had one, wow run up the middle, about 15-yard gain, and then he just stumps Eric Murray after. Gets a little chippy with Jarian Jones afterwards. And then LaQuint Allen, getting some reps with the first-team offense in the red zone, working pass protection. He had a really good rep against a blitzing Devin Lloyd. And, he just, rookie, late day three pick, and completely held his ground against a 4-year starter at linebacker who was a first-round pick. So I thought that was an impressive aspect of it. The wide receivers and tight ends, it was tough. It was tough. Everybody dropped something, it seems like. I didn't have Travis Hunter and De'Ami Brown with a drop, but had Brian Thomas with one, Austin Trammell, Trenton Irwin, Hunter Long had 2 drops by my count. Tank Bigsby had a drop. It was not a good day for the Jaguars in terms of bringing in the passes. Joshua Cephas had some issues there too. So, and again, this kind of showed up in the preseason game last week. I said it during the game, and people, teal-colored glasses, I completely get it, but, saying, it wasn't really the starters. It's guys who they might still need to play, even though they're not a starter. You might need them at some point. And drops and penalties really played the offense on Thursday. It was a tough scrimmage to watch. It felt like it was something they just had to grind it through and get to the end and then say, let's take the tape of this, set it on fire, and bury it. So I thought there were a lot of areas that the offense needed to get better. The offensive line was a lot of rotating. You saw 6 different guys take critical snaps, in my opinion, at right tackle. And Anton Harrison, Walker Little, Wyatt Milam, Fred Johnson, Chuma Edoga, and Patrick McCary. 6 different right tackles. It was something to see. And Anton got hurt early on in practice, so we'll see, if that was because Anton got hurt and they still need to figure out swing tackle because Cole Van Lanen's also hurt, or what really was the reasoning for it. But overall, I thought just a bad day for the offense. Defensively, some bright spots. Jarian Jones and Christian Braswell both had really good days. Jarian had several pass breakups. He looked good in one-on-ones as well before the scrimmage started. He had a really quality rep against Brian Thomas. And then last play of the scrimmage, Brian Thomas, I thought had him beat by a step or two. Deep downfield, he ends up really good recovery speed, challenges the ball at the catch point. I thought Brian Thomas Jr. was going to come down with it for a score, and he's able to knock it out. Defense went crazy. Josh Hines Allen ran from like 40 yards out to, go celebrate with him. So Christian Braswell, I thought, had a solid day. Had a really good PBU on Cephas. Made a nice stop on Travis Hunter for it would have been like a 1-yard gain on the screen. So those are some positives defensively. I thought Andrew Wingard had a nice day. He had the interception, obviously, but he also had 2 tackles for loss against a run. He's really been an enforcer against a run in training camp as a box safety, just flying from the backside, unblocked, and making these big tackles. It was really similar to a tackle he had the day before against Tank Bigsby that resulted in a safety. So there was some good. There was more, in my opinion, not so good from the Jaguars on Thursday. But the entire scrimmage, I thought, was kind of defined by the offense, just never really, getting out of neutral. It just seemed like it was sputtering the entire time. And, whether it's drops, whether it's penalties, whether it's Trevor Lawrence, whatever, the Jaguars quickly need to find some answers before they get ready for week 1 against the Carolina Panthers. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. Please make sure you like, review, follow, subscribe, whatever on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. As always, we'll be back next time.